just going to reintroduce Lydia. So Lydia is joining us from the US. She has a really impressive CV, that intersection between, security and technology and those emerging technologies. She's worked with national security, and she's lying in that intersection between national security, strategy and technology. She forecasts emerging threats around disruptive technology and participates in the NATO Science for Peace program. And during the Obama administration, Lydia was awarded the US Presidential Service Award for service to the cyber community. She holds executive education and certification on cybersecurity policy from Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and is a USAID Joint Certified for Humanitarian Operations. Lydia holds a PhD in political science and security policy from the University of Siena. However, she does not limit herself to just technology-based interests, as she also has her own fashion label called Empowering Workwear by Lydia. And Lydia is an artist and launched an art series about the human experience with technology. And we are delighted to hang one of her pieces in RDI Hub. On shipment to us at the moment, and we'll send you a snap when we get it and hang it. So thank you for that generosity, Lydia. Dr. Lydia Kostopoulos, we welcome you to the John McCarthy AI Summer School. I have been looking forward to your talk all day. Welcome.
Absolutely a pleasure to be here.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Perfect. I so look forward to this conversation, and I look forward to the questions. It's been amazing to hear the other speakers, and I think that now I'll be closing the day with kind of a holistic perspective to see kind of what technologies are out there and place them in the context of AI wellness technologies that are intangible, tangible, and embedded. So with that, I will start my presentation. First thing, I like to believe that we should have a mindset around technology. We've got so many new technologies coming at us and being developed at such a rapid pace. And I think that while we should embrace new technology, we should be also consciously and purposefully tech forward with them. A quote that I always love to share is from Andrew Nigg, who says that just as electricity transformed almost everything 100 years ago, today it is AI that will transform everything else. So if you can think about how a little over 100 years ago, you had your kettle that became electrified, you had your stove that became electrified. It's that same revamping of our world around us, but with a cognitive element inside it. So as this talk is about the different AI technologies and wellness, I thought it is only befitting that we have a baseline definition for artificial intelligence and one for wellness. So I chose the one from the Oxford Dictionary, and it is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. Although I think that we can start to augment our understanding of AI as we incorporate more sensors, particularly in the healthcare domain. Wellness. This is from the World Health Organization, the WHO. I love this definition. It's my favorite one for wellness. They classify wellness as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So just because you're not sick in the disease sense, it does not mean that you have wellness. And I like this holistic approach of physical, mental, and social well-being. So those are the two definitions we will approach this presentation with. The reason I wanted to separate some of these technologies in these three categories is because I think that our relationship to technology matters, and we humans experience things through an embodied experience. Our consciousness and everything that we do in the world is done from inside our body. We see through our eyes in our body. We experience the world, whether it's cold or hot, through our senses on our body. And then similarly, the cognitive space, our brain through many years of evolution has evolved to the way it is now, where we still have the amygdala that looks for danger and protects us from that danger. And I thought that if this would be a nice way to kind of understand how we humans will relate to this technology. So starting with intangible, it doesn't have a physical form, as you would imagine, because it is intangible. And these kinds of AI technologies are the kind that you would basically have a user interface that you interact with on an app, or it could be a voice command interaction. So one of the biggest spaces in this intangible AI wellness space is really battling mental health challenges. And the ones that I'm going to show here, these are some that have really tried to push the bounds in terms of various ways of delivering this kind of healthcare. So before we rapidly try to say that an AI could be better than a human therapist, I think it's always important to fall back on that, regardless if it was a physical or a cognitive task. It has always been proven so far that even when an algorithm can beat a human or excel better than a human at one task, it is always the human machine together that beats the algorithm alone. And so we need to look at these technologies as something that augments us and makes us better, but not something that needs to replace us. So in this sense, one of the interesting findings is that an AI therapist can elicit more information from patients than a human would. And what they found is that there's the inhibition is reduced because humans feel less judgment because it's not another human that they're saying these vulnerable things to, and instead it's an algorithm. So one example is Adicade. This is an app to help people who have addictive behaviors that they're trying to work through. It could be an addictive behavior with alcohol, or it could be with drugs or other things. It could even be with gaming. And it's what I've found that these technologies are like is almost like a coach, a human coach that's there by your side to kind of give you those tips that you need and be there to nudge you. So this is one of those apps. What you can do with it is you can journal your own feelings, what you've done, and they can even help you by finding local support groups where you can go to in times of need. And this app actually can also start to sense when you are probably going to engage in an addictive behavior and give you small bits of encouragement before you do. A different app, but again, the same intangible concept is Woebot. Woebot is an app where you can have chat conversations about your mood and how you're feeling. And what I think is really nice about this is that sometimes it's just as simple as having someone ask you a question, why, or why are you feeling this way? Or could you tell me more about that? To help us figure out for ourselves why it is we feel the way we do, and help us navigate some of the complexities of our thoughts that when we get them out, we can understand much better than when they're ruminating in our head. And one of the advantages of these types of apps is that it's really 24 hours a day. It does not take vacations, no holidays. And so it's one of those things that you could just have at a moment's need. So some studies found that just after 2 weeks of using Woebot, participants experienced a significant reduction in depression and anxiety. And I think that this has to do from an epistemological well-being perspective, in the sense that when you know why you're feeling what you're feeling, you feel better. That's my hypothesis as to why people have felt a reduction in depression and anxiety, because this algorithm has helped them clear through some of those feelings. Another option, this is at a university in the US, is they're looking at multiple choices where you can engage and provide input. So this one's a decision tree algorithm. And then another one, which I think is quite interesting, is one where you use the camera And the algorithm processes the emotions in your face as you are responding. And then the algorithm responds to you, but based on what your face is doing. So this is almost like a human trying to get cues from body language and also voice, intonation. And there are already algorithms that you can put together, algorithms that understand happiness in the voice or sadness in the voice or anxiety. And this one includes also the gaze, where the eyes are looking up and down. So this one is an app that is meant to help therapists take notes, but this is an example of human machine teaming, and it's also HIPAA compliant. And again, I think that it's so important where we don't just say we are offloading some of this very important emotional labor that we do need professionals to take part in, but it is something where we can make those professionals be better at their job. So moral of the story is that human machine teaming is the more effective approach. So moving away from the mental health focus, another wellness application that hopefully will be coming to a hotel near us is this initiative of the Hotel Room of the Future by Marriott. And the idea is that they would take your profile for those who already have memberships with different hotels and get points. You would have a broader built out profile where when you enter the room would welcome you. I mean, you can sometimes already see in the screen, you know, that it says hello to you with your name, but it would be far more than that, where it would have the lighting exactly how you liked it at the time that you'd like it. It would also have images of your family, for example, nearby in the digital picture cases, and also provide you the type of exercise that you like, whether it's yoga or HIIT or any other kind of activity, because it knows what you like and what you want. And so this makes the hotel experience more personalized. So this example is intangible and almost tangible. The reason it's not in the tangible category is because you don't interact with something physical, you give something physical. So Viome is a company that will do a gut test for you, but you need to provide them a stool sample. And what they'll do is they will tell you all the bacteria that is inside your gut, but because they have these algorithms that they've developed over time, they can tell you what types of food work better with your gut bacteria composition. And these are kind of examples of AI health wellness technologies that are available to the average consumer that can really change one's life. So you can all of a sudden start to eat foods that mesh better with your body. They give you what foods are your superfoods, what foods are your avoid foods, and then they also give you a breakdown of the inflammation in your gut, your digestive efficiency, and tips on how you can improve it. And the more algorithms we have in these spaces, the more personalized medicine we're going to have as well. So now into the tangible category. The tangible is something where we've got an algorithm that is embedded in something physical that we physically interact with. In the sleep domain, there are many of those, and sleep is one of the most powerful things for our immune system, just rest and recovery. It's the longevity clinic, free longevity clinic. And these technologies help you better understand what your sleep profile is and nudge you in that right behavior. So again, we have this pattern of coaching that algorithms help coach us in the right direction. So with this, it's on the side of your bed. You don't have to hold it, and it can read what your heart rate is and how you slept and give you your light sleep, your deep sleep, and all of that. It also helps you clear your mind. It has a piece of it where you can just put your thoughts down before you go to bed, because sometimes people have a hard time sleeping because they're thinking about all the things they need to do the next day. And then they also have some music that can help soothe. But it's really the AI piece where it gives you that kind of corrective nudging behavior based on all of the data that it has captured. The same for the sleep pillow. Same concept. And now that when we think about algorithms and we think about devices, we also have to think about the other layer of smart home compatibility, because more and more people are starting to embed operating systems inside their home. A very popular one is the Google one and the Amazon one. So these are things that are also coming about. So it's like almost an AI within an AI. This one is my personal favorite. It's something I use. I've been using it for 14 months, and I can confidently say that it has really helped me understand myself and understand how I can improve my sleep. The algorithm has been particularly accurate and interesting from the narrative perspective. So it takes, just like the other ones, it takes the data and then it gives you a narrative in the morning, and it says, did you eat something late last night? Or did you have a workout right before you slept? And it tends to know what I've done when I haven't slept well. But it also, similarly, when I sleep well, it tells me, you know, you've done great, but I know I can pinpoint what are the things I did to do better. And little things like this is where AI becomes my coach, and it helps me be a better person by understanding what are the things that I can improve with myself. I don't think that this takes away human professionals in the wellness space. What it does is it helps me have more agency and have more information when I come to, for example, a doctor, and I can say, listen, you know, my sleep pattern has been like this. There's an anomaly. It's been happening for, you know, 2 weeks, and it doesn't make sense because I can tell you from 14 months of sleep tracking that this is not normal. Something's wrong. Eventually, I imagine that I hope not too far away from now, we will see more of this in our GP, in our GP's office, so that we can relate better to our data, ourselves, and improve. Another one I think is very interesting is the space of exercise. Again, with the same coaching theme, this home exercise equipment has an algorithm and metrics, and it follows you through just like a personal trainer would. But being able to see those stats and see how you're improving is very motivational. So moving away from these kinds of coaching, wellness, tangible apps and stuff, I think other ones that are really important are the ones that make us feel calm and cuddly and help us relax our nervous system. And this is an example of Pero, the seal. And it moves around, it can look you in the eyes, and it has provided a lot of good feelings for both the elderly in homes as well as kids, as you can see here. This one doesn't have AI, but I bring it up only because it is only a matter of time before robots like these are in the hospital with algorithms as well embedded in them. And it could be simple things like being able to have the information of the heart rate and oxygen levels and all of that. This one is for elderly care. I think that we can notice already, particularly in industrialized countries, the rise of loneliness. And this is something that we're going to have to consider as potentially part of our elderly care. Finally, in the tangible section, there are sex robots that have been around for a long time, but the novelty recently is having AI embedded inside the robots so they can communicate to you. And for those who think that this is just a vanity object, it doesn't have to be really. There are people who feel very lonely and would like to have someone that they can talk to that looks like a human, and this can provide companionship. The interesting piece is that they have an app where you don't need to have the robot, you can just have the app. And you can create the personality that you want of the person. And in the screen, you'll see it has like courage, sensuality, humor, cruelty, humility. So this also definitely raises questions around the ethics of trying to create a personality that you want to interact with. And another hotel example is removing people from the hotels. This is in Japan, where they have robots, including dinosaurs, to welcome you to the hotel room and help you check in. And so it is, I haven't tried it yet, but I'd definitely love to go and experience it. but I have an inkling that I would feel lonely in the experience. There's something wonderful about having human interaction. Finally, the last section is the embedded artificial intelligence. So we had some examples of intangible and tangible, and by no means is this a comprehensive presentation, but there are sprinkles to kind of give a feel of the collective umbrella of different AI wellness technologies. And this one, this is, I think, probably the most ethically contentious one, because it's about interacting directly with your brain and a computer. So DARPA is looking to see how there could be brain-computer interfaces, whether it is sending electricity to the motor cortex to stimulate a certain part of the brain to reduce anxiety, or whether it is actually putting something inside on top of the brain. So that would definitely be going through the skull into the brain. So this one angle that this has been explored is for mental health problems. Right now, Neuralink is making the biggest breakthroughs for brain-computer interface. Neuralink is owned by Elon Musk, and they are trying to create a minimally invasive brain-computer face device. And when I say minimally invasive, it still is drilling through your skull to put something on top of your brain. And right now, they've managed to have monkeys play games with each other, just using their brain. And this has a whole slew of different ways that this can be used for wellness, but also where we do need to consider what are the ramifications of having something in one's brain. Another aspect is part of the grieving process. There are some ways where you can take the text messages and videos and voice of a loved one who's passed away and try to recreate them in an algorithmic form where you can interact. And there's people who have done so and have done so quite successfully, in the sense that it has the responses have been very similar to what the person would have said. This is something that would probably need to be explored from the psychology angle to understand how helpful this could be or how harmful this could be. And obviously questions of, did the person who passed away give consent to this being done? And this is kind of a looking ahead path, but although it kind of exists today already. So there are some people already talking about posthumous personhood. And that's something I think that we should consider in terms of the grieving wellness process. And then finally, this is an interesting company. They're called Nectome, and what they are doing is they keep your brain right before you die. They will come and do a procedure and keep your brain. And the idea is that they want to recreate all of your network in your head and bring it back in a digital form. Whether or not your consciousness would be there or not is open to ethical debate, but this is a very interesting new phenomenon. So to conclude, technology is amazing, and we need to be aware of how it works so that we can better understand whether or not to take it seriously, whether or not to use the algorithmic decision support as a credible sounding board. We also need to set boundaries on technology use. As much as I am a huge fan of technology, I think that part of having wellness with AI and other tech is also having healthy boundaries. And for every person, that looks different. And then we also need to create a safe space of information absorption. And what I mean by that is that it can be very overwhelming to receive so much information about your body that you may not even know what to do with it. And so it's important to take that information in a way that you can absorb and on your schedule. Otherwise, it can be too overwhelming. And then claim and reclaim agency and privacy. So one of the things that these technologies can do is give us more agency to understand who we are and how we want to move our life and our wellness and our health forward. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we continue to maintain that agency of this is what I want to do, this is not what I want to do, and not relinquish that and give it to an algorithm and outsource our decision making completely to an algorithm, because algorithms may not always be correct. And privacy is important as well, and it's important to understand how much of your data you're giving away and how it's being used and where you feel comfortable on that spectrum. And then lastly, not lose sight of our embodied experiences and our needs that we have with other humans. And it's just simple. I think with COVID, many of us can appreciate the wonder of sitting with someone and having coffee in person, and how different that is from having a Zoom coffee with someone. So I think it's befitting to end with loneliness. That loneliness will not end when the pandemic ends, and this is an epidemic that we have. And technology can help, but we need to make sure that we are having that agency that I talked about before, and saying technology can help me up to here, but after that, I want the human aspect of it, and understand where your human machine teaming is. And then finally, another thing, you know, it's going to be ironic that I've talked about technology in such positive ways, and then want to conclude by saying you may want to consider technology detox. Having a lot of technology can create burnout. We're always on our screens, always looking at apps, and everything is on the phone. And so I think it's also important for our wellness to sometimes take space from all of it. So I invite you to take a look at a game I created. It's about questions around the different emerging technologies that affect our human experience from birth to death. It's available online at sapien2-0.com, and it's in 5 languages: English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic. And I hope that this could be a continuation of our talk today. And I look forward to all of your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lydia. There were so many moments in the talk that my mind kind of exploded, and I am getting lots of messages here, and everyone's having a similar experience. Just such what felt futuristic becomes very close all of a sudden. And it was really nice that yourself and the first speaker we had on today, Dr. Conor McGinn, came with the same solution almost, that it was not an either or, AI or human, it was AI and he had data to show that. So I'm lighting up your question, so I'm going to get right into it. So Frank asked, and this came up a lot in the questions, how far is too far in AI in your opinion? For him, he's like, I may draw the line at constructing a partner virtual with a personality embedded, but curious to know your perspective.
So I think that something we need to realize is that window of what's normal and acceptable shifts over time. And there's this wonderful expression of from the ages between 0 and 15, everything is normal. Like if you grew up with a VCR, that's how the world was. If you grew up with color TV, that's how the world was. Same thing with internet and touchscreens. If whatever it is that exists when you're between 0 and 15, that's how the world is. And then between 15 and 35, all the new technology is just cool and new. And then after 35, it's just against humanity and the way things should be. So it's a funny expression, but I think that it drives the point home that there are generational differences, and also culture does change. So if you think about, many of you will remember the 90s, and you will remember phone calls, and you will remember dating in the 90s was very different to dating today. And so times change, and we also change about what we think is acceptable and not. In the 90s, saying that you met a stranger online and then got married with them could have been pretty bizarre back then. But now, actually, it's quite common. And so when it comes to these technologies, I think it's the same thing, where the more that we start to see them in our surroundings, the more that we start to trust them, the more it just becomes normal. And, you know, we already have AI all around us. You know, when you use Google Maps to go somewhere, that's an algorithm helping you out. When somebody uses Amazon Alexa in their home to tell them the weather or other things, that's an algorithm that is a support at home. So I think that the line is different for every person because of our comfort levels. So for me personally, I'm trying to use the things that I think are going to help my life the most and go in the direction that I want to go in, where I feel comfortable. This is the agency piece. So for me, I've used the sleep ring and I've used Viome because I wanted to focus on nutrition and see how I can improve my nutrition and also my sleep. When COVID happened, I got that to, and they both worked out. But I will say with the Viome, it was more information that I could handle. It probably take me a year to probably absorb all of that information. So I just took the food and then I can get to the others at another time. But I'm setting those healthy boundaries where I realize that it's just too much, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Joan, actually, it's kind of an add-on. Jonah asked, do you think the convenience AI brings to the table could pose negative effects to cognitive thinking?
Yes. So yes, and how? So we've already seen research to show that we are cognitively more lazy because we have everything on our phone. The phone is an extension also of our memory and our capabilities. We don't remember phone numbers anymore. We don't remember anyone's emails or anything like that because we've got the phone. And so you might say, oh, is this a bad thing? Should we go and start memorizing everybody's phone numbers? If you want to. So this is where you have to rationalize and say, what is it that I feel comfortable with allowing the algorithm to take care of, and what is it that I don't? And this comes into the self-knowledge. And for me, I think self-knowledge is a huge part of wellness. And this is why when I said technology is great and we need to understand it better. So you know, and you say, this is my risk appetite, this is my privacy appetite, and say, this is where I fall on these spectrums, and I want to use this for this. And I understand that by using my phone for the memory of all of my phone numbers, I am not remembering those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about knowing your own appetite risk, knowing your own limitations, right? And what you're comfortable with. And as 35 plus adults, we can do that. But when it comes to kind of monitoring our children's experience with this type of technology, where is best practice? It's a little more blurred.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful question, because children, so the 0 to 15, everything is normal to them. So I can't tell you the countless examples I've had of friends where they go on vacation and the kid walks into the hotel room and says, Alexa. Like, no, Alexa's not here. But why isn't Alexa here? And it's simple things like that. And then or another funny story about technology. One kid went to this rustic hotel, and the hotel room had a phone, like hotel rooms do have phones that are connected to the wall. And the kid, who was 6, told his dad, why is the phone connected to the wall? Like, that does not make sense. Why would a phone be connected to the wall? And so this logic, I think, is important to appreciate with kids, but at the same time, this is a great opportunity to set them up for success for a future of agency and control and privacy that they can do. So we need to start first by saying, what is the AI that we're going to use and trust? And then how do we explain to them that, hey, by the way, this algorithm is fallible. What you see isn't going to always be perfect. And so, for example, with sleep rings and sleep stuff, like the deep sleep, the REM and all of that, those aren't always very accurate. What's more important is to see what is their best accurate part, so you know what part to trust more and what part to trust less. So for example, for the Oura Ring, it's 98% accurate for the heart rate. So, and the heart rate can show you how well you've rested or if you're recovering from something. So I tend to put a heavy weight when I look at the results in the morning. I tend to put a heavy weight on the heart rate and less on the other things. And so teaching kids, like, hey, this is how algorithms work. They're math and statistics. They've used a lot of data to understand what is a normal pattern and what isn't. And sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Dr. Lydia, the sleep pillow, how does it remove noise like partner snoring and other noises during the night to ensure it can get accurate data?
So the stand one, that one collects the noise, and it will not remove your partner's sleep noise. So for example, if your partner's snoring, it won't remove that. It will count that. And that's a good thing that it counts that, because that's part of your sleep environment. And if your sleep environment is noisy, that affects your quality of sleep as well.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. So you can just blame the partner in the morning and you have the proof. That is it.
Yeah.
So what algorithm, this is from Adrian, what algorithm is used by the Addict Aid app? Do you know?
I'm not familiar with what algorithm they're using, and I imagine it would most probably be proprietary.
Fair. And do you think, sorry, this is from Andrew, where do you see the most potential in AI, through tangible or intangible means?
So tangible comes with the intangible. You know, the tangible, you get the app side by side with it. So I think the tangible piece is really great because of the sensors that you're getting, and that really helps improve your environment. So like something else I have, which to my knowledge does not have AI in it, is a air quality sensor, but I have an app that shows me the results of it, and so I know exactly what's going on in my home. I know how certain cleaning sprays affect the quality of my air because I can immediately see it. And so I start to gain an understanding, but it's not, that one doesn't have AI, but the interface is really what's key. So it's sensors and interface and then AI, or just sensors and interface. I think those two together really combined pack a punch.
Absolutely. Patricia asked, do you find there is much consideration of potential privacy liability problems if data collection and storage is compromised? So like malicious attacks and breaches become more prevalent. How can the user feel confident that their personal data will be kept safe? And I think your Marriott example is a prime one, like having the kids' pictures in the room. Like, how do you keep all that safe?
Right. So this is what I meant about like the risk appetite. So there's an element of trust that you say, I trust this third-party provider to store and use good data management practices. However, every time you are sharing data, you are giving that data away. So what I think could be good to do until we've reached a place of more confidence in that space could be to not put your name. To simply not put your name on when you register your device. And I've done that. I have a separate phone for these apps and I don't use my name. And obviously my name is there if I have any credit card purchases, but anytime that profile has a separate name so that that data is combined with a name that's not mine. In the event of a leak, that name that's not mine will appear with all of my data. And so that's one way to do OPSEC, operational security, for your own data. It is, you want them to have that data security. I mean, you could trust and still do that. I don't see why you couldn't have an extra name.
Great, thank you. And we've one question here, which is around, do you think, or is there data around the society welcoming AI therapists, especially given the loneliness pandemic, where we all delight in those potential conversations that are not scheduled or not on video? You know, we're all lurking around Lidl trying to talk to someone. Is there data that shows that the AI as a therapist is on the increase?
Is the AI what on increase?
So AI and the coaching for AI, that's obviously on the increase, and adoption is quite high.
Yeah, I think that in the space of human performance, you'll see that take off in terms of the apps around exercise and all of that. Sleep, that one's been going crazy. Like everybody's starting to do that now. But in terms of the companionship and the loneliness piece, I think that we don't have an option but to face that head first, because we have an aging population. Ireland, Western Europe, even industrialized countries in East Asia, Japan, Korea. So in the US as well, we have a growing aging population that is living longer, sometimes healthier and longer, sometimes not healthier and longer. But we will have a lot of people who are home alone and will not have that companionship. And there is an element of saying, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with, just as people have pets that are human live pets, why couldn't you have an algorithm pet, which do exist, or a robotic pet? And then the next step, which I understand is still socially contentious, is the life-size look-alike human doll. I understand that there's discomfort in that. I initially felt that way, but over the years, after reading more about it and watching High AI, which is a film that came out in the Berlin Film Festival 2 years ago, I really had a renewed appreciation for what this can do for people's well-being. And some people just have social anxieties that they cannot overcome. And sometimes having a lifelike human doll at home to be able to talk to, even if the algorithm isn't so great, is actually really good for someone to not commit suicide. So sometimes I think that we need to look beyond what we think about these technologies and try to understand what is the good that they can bring and where are the spaces and the vulnerable, marginalized people in society that could benefit from them.
Yeah, and I think it's a very fair point, because like you're only projecting your own experience there. One thing I'd just like to get your opinion on is when we're talking about that, like post-human, like after death, recreating that person. What's your own current, because this can change, right, personal views on that?
So initially, when I was first thinking about it, I thought, this could be a really wonderful idea. You wouldn't ever have to lose your loved one. You would be able to have them by your side. And then I lost my father. And then I kind of revisited that thought, and I haven't drawn a conclusion yet. I think that that's something that every person will feel differently about. And also it doesn't have to be that right after you want it. It could be after 50 years or after 20 years where you decide, you know what, this would be nice. And you're at a different place in the healing process and all that. And so I think for every person it's different, but I do think that we shouldn't stop trying to create that. So for example, that's for someone who's deceased, but you can do that for somebody who's alive right now. So Deepak Chopra has a digital version of himself, and it just came out before last year, and you can interact with him. He can coach you through meditative practices, and all of his books are there. So the algorithm is really robust in terms of how he thinks. And so I would be very open, for example, to try and create an algorithmic version of myself to see if there's some utility in that. Could I have interactions with other people that would be useful to other people in an algorithmic version of myself? So there's many ways to recreate yourself that could be useful while you're alive.
And when you think about that statement, there's not enough hours in the day, like it feels like a really good solution. So when you spoke about the AI features in hotel, this is going to be my last question because I know they're shouting at me to tell me to wrap it. So I could talk to you all day later. But when you spoke about the AI features in the hotel, the Marriott example, is that happening now, or how futuristic is that?
Well, they're working on it. I don't know I know that there's bits and pieces that they've embedded. So like the wellness pieces, they have some of those options on apps. But I think that it requires an infrastructure overhaul to kind of put those technologies inside the rooms. So I think that it'll be some time, but it'll probably be in strategic locations where they're going to start piloting those first. So
watch out. You never know. The next time you hit the Marriott, there might be like a special surprise for you.
Yeah.
Lydia, they're all shouting me to like wrap, so I just want to say like a massive thank you. I've been looking forward to this talk all day, and it exceeded my expectations. I've seen the deck beforehand, so I should have known it was going to be good. But yeah, real like mind-bending, eye-opening, and even just understanding your own level of risk, trust, all that kind of stuff. Like really great. And thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. It was so lovely having you virtually today, the real version of you, and I will send you a snap of the art piece when it's hanging up. It's going to be in here in the event space. So yeah, so center and proud. So yeah, fantastic talking to you, and thank you so much for answering everybody's questions.